What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. I'm also going to give you guys a very important warning about the current setup on SPY and the QQQ that could lead to some temporary upside and possibly some major downside that could be coming if we see this setup pan out. Of course, I use the word if, so keep that in mind. Before I get started, though, just know a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below or use my QR code right here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000 or more, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia plus a $100 cash reward. Deposits $10,000 or more to get $300 worth of Nvidia plus $100, or deposits $50,000 or more to get $1,000 of free Nvidia stock plus $100. You're also going to qualify for an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash, and the offer ends very soon, so please use my link down below to sign up. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the stock market. So let me just let you guys know that right now, for the short term, the stock market is still bullish because we're making higher highs and higher lows ever since we got that big sell-off on Friday. The market has been jumping and jumping and trying to slowly push closer to all-time highs, right? This is technically bullish for the short term. But for the medium term, for the next couple of weeks, even if we go a little bit higher, there is an argument to be made that this could be a giant left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. And if we can't take out the all-time high, we come short. If 670 does not break on SPY, there is a risk of us getting a rejection back down towards the 200 EMA into the 650s, and this could just be a giant head and shoulders rejection. We also have a rising wedge forming as we're going higher, so that's another confluence of some downside that could be coming. But as of right now, we don't really have confirmation. And as I said yesterday, it's very difficult to predict everything the market's going to do because of how the whole trade war with the US and China is very capricious, very difficult to predict. And there's a lot of external factors and contingencies that are really affecting the way in which this market is going to be moving. And I just want to say that for now, right, we got some big bank earnings. We got good earnings from Bank of America and Morgan Stanley that helped the market bounce alongside some more defensive moves by the bulls. But is that enough for us to remain at all-time highs and continue to run, or do we get some kind of rejection? So I first want to talk about what President Trump just said that's very important. Then I'll break down more details about the charts. So I do go over the details of this like pretty much every day. So I'm not going to go over every specific detail, but I just want to make it very clear that the tensions between the US and China are still at a high. As you guys know, we had this whole dispute between the US and China and many other countries when it comes to the export regulations, export controls on rare earth materials. And then the US, led by President Trump, we've threatened a 100% tariff on China. China have been trying to retaliate. We're seeing port fees increasing on American products, and we're seeing the same thing just going back and forth, at least for now. So President Trump did mention that he wanted to be a reasonable negotiator. Those were his words. That's what we also heard from JD Vance in the past about this. But as of right now, President Trump seems to not be getting the best of responses, as we're seeing a dynamic reaction. And he's now saying that the U.S. is in a trade war with China. And he's telling us that once again, the tariffs that he's going to be imposing are very key, because he believes it's going to help us alleviate a lot of national security threats. And he says they're essential for our defense. That's what President Trump said. Then we also had President Trump talk about what's happening with China. He is still going to likely meet up with Xi Jinping, who is the president of China, in a couple of weeks in South Korea, most likely. He made that very clear. That's another big update, at least so far. So far, President Trump does want to meet up with Xi Jinping and negotiate, but that does not necessarily mean that we're in the clear. There's still a lot of tension right now between the US and China. There's also news that came out involving the tariff threats. So President Trump said that with what's going on, he repeated about his tariffs, how they're going to be essential in this case. He also implied that China's playing games, and what they're doing is not necessarily in their best interest if they keep on, once again, retaliating and such. However, he is still open to negotiations, and nothing is guaranteed yet. And he has implied that we should just keep a calm demeanor and be very patient with the way in which things are going. So he kind of like is trying to keep the same tonality as before. And then we also had some more news that came out from our Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, We talked about how the China US trade war is on the verge of a significant escalation because of how there could be a new wave of high tariffs coming. They also mentioned that China is at risk of violating the previous trade pact, and they're saying that this could lead to harsher restrictions as time goes on. So that's a very important update we're getting from our trade representatives and our Treasury Secretary. So this is a big update, at least so far. So keep that in mind. And I still think there's a lot of uncertainty about this. President Trump also mentioned that he's open to negotiations. He claims that he got confirmation from Modi, who is the Prime Minister of India, to not buy Russian oil, and he's trying to advise China to do the same thing, which once again implies that we're still negotiating with China. There's still a lot of uncertainty in the air, and this whole situation could change. We're going to have to wait and see how it goes. But right now, things remain very, very intense. Things are still very, very much the same as before. So just remember that, guys. We're still waiting to see what's about to happen. But President Trump is still saying that the trade war is in full effect right now. It's not necessarily coming to an end just yet. And besides that, that's the latest update, at least on this. President Trump gave a speech, and as he was speaking, the market did bounce a little bit, but then overall, we still got a flat close on SPY and the QQQ, and the setup is still bullish for the shorter term, although it could lead to a more bearish move later on down the line, and we'll talk about the setups in just a few minutes. Other pieces of news involve the government shutdown. So, as you guys know, the government shutdown is just not good for everyday Americans, federal workers, and such. And the Senate failed to advance the House passed short term spending bill for the ninth time, unfortunately, which means that we are continuing to see, the shutdown. Lots of federal employees, depending on the departments, are not going to be paid. Certain government services are delayed and not happening, and it's just not the best of things. So we'll see when they finally pass the spending bill. They will eventually do it. But another big effect for the markets is that this is going to be affecting how data ends up coming out. Because tomorrow is Thursday, October 16th. We have some data from the Philly Fed in the morning. Then we have a bunch of Fed speakers like Barr, Myron, Waller, and Bowman, who are all giving speeches at 9 and 10 a.m., but there's not really much else, right? We should have gotten PPI data. That's not going to be coming out because of the government shutdown. It's going to be delayed. Same thing with initial jobless claims. A lot of jobs numbers are going to continue to be delayed because of this government shutdown situation. Now, despite this, Jerome Powell made it very clear that the Fed can transition away from quantitative tightening and eventually ease on policy a lot more in the upcoming months. And with him saying that, that's what helped the market gain a lot of momentum. That's what really pushed the market even today. But then keep in mind that that's a temporary move, and we're going to see what happens at least moving forward. There's not really too much data coming out. We got some good earnings. Bank of America and Morgan Stanley did very, very well with earnings. This is what really helped the finance sector. Tomorrow we have TSMC announcing earnings alongside like Interactive Brokers and a few more. Or also we have Charles Schwab in the morning, so be ready for that. And finally, fear is making up the majority of sentiment right now. Momentum is at fear. We're going to see if this persists or not. The put to call option ratio is neutral for now, and then the VIX is also at extreme fear, so we're going to see how this ends up reacting. But that's what we're seeing, at least so far, in terms of all of this. The market still has some fear, but it's not doing too badly. It's still holding up quite well. So with that being said, what do I think is going to happen to the stock market? I'm going to give you guys my prediction. Let's first go over the bullish and bearish cases. Then I'll talk about my prediction. So if you're a perma bull, if you think the market's going to rally really hard, here's what you want to see happen. Okay, we're going to go over these cases first because once again, we can't predict everything on the news involving the US and China perfectly. Sometimes it's like kind of tricky, which is why you want to be unbiased. So if you're a bull, you want to see SPY continue to make higher highs and higher lows. Just like this. You want to see us basically break past this 670 area. If we continue to uptrend just like this and we get back above 670, I think this is the tough resistance, and we could be looking for all-time highs again if we just break past that. And we could invalidate this head and shoulders and just keep on going if 670 breaks. So I'm going to draw a line right here at the 670 zone. If we break this white line, then we're going to be going for all-time highs. Make sure you remember that level. It's very important. However, at the same time, we have a very, very key support right here at 665. If 665 fails, there's a greater probability of more downside. And if you want to be a bear, you want to see us basically fail at 665 and close below that. If we can't hold 665, then I see a risk of us retesting the low of the day at like 658 or below. And there's going to be a risk of this kind of like rejecting, at least for a lower move. Now, another bearish case is going to be that, look, you have a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder forming on SPY. Even if we bounce a bit, we could still get a big rejection, lose this low. If we start kind of seeing like a trend shift and we establish a lower high compared to this all-time high, that could be a sign that this is a head and shoulders and we're about to see a big dump in the markets. Maybe some more news comes out involving China. Maybe something happens. Who knows? But I'm just trying to say that there is a risk of this, and that's why you want to be very careful. And also, we like to look at confluences, which means that you have two or more signs that point in the same direction, meaning that you also have a rising wedge on SPY. So the bears will argue that, look, it's a rising wedge. Even if we go a little bit higher, we could still see a big rejection if we can't take out 670 because of the rising wedge. And then that also correlates with this head and shoulders, right? The right shoulder could just be like the rising wedge rejection. That is going to be like the more bearish case. And if we lose 652, then yes, we're going to be dumping towards, I would say, the 630s for another leg down if that support fails us. If we ever close below 652, we're not quite there yet, but just keep those levels in mind. So now that you guys know the bullish and bearish cases, what's going to likely happen tomorrow, what is my prediction? So here's my prediction, okay? I still think that the trend is bullish for the shorter term, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. And I think tomorrow we try to go a little higher. We might be attempting to go for like 668 to 670 again. And I still think we're going to maintain this rising wedge for another day or two, but I would be very, very careful heading into like Friday because we're going to see if the rising wedge pans out and gives us a rejection or not, if this is a trap. So for now, be ready for some more upside. I think we push a little bit more on SPY, going for 668. But if we can't take out 670, there's going to be that risk of us getting some kind of rejection. So for now, I am still bullish, at least for the morning. But as we approach the afternoon, just like how we saw today, how the market kind of like sold off a bit, we might see something very similar. We might kind of like pop in the morning, go for the higher levels like 668 to 670. Then we could turn right back down towards the lower levels, and we'll see if we get some kind of rejection like that or not. I'm very, very unbiased about this, so watch your levels just to be safe. Also, there could be a trade idea right here. So let's just say we do push to like 668 or so. If you want to take a short here, you could try that. I mean, it's not financial advice when I say this, but you want to set a stop at like 670. That means like if you're swinging a couple of weeks out, you have like a tight stop right here. In case we do break this, you could invalidate the bearish setup. So keep that in mind. There's just one idea I wanted to share. The QQQ has an almost identical setup. So like I said before, the bullish case on the triple Q is this: higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. So we're still looking bullish, favoring 607.5, if not new all-time highs if we break past that. If the triple Q could break and hold above 607, if we break 607, I think we could be heading for all-time highs. I think we could be going for this imbalance fill back up to the all-time high, and this could be a trap to invalidate the head and shoulders. That's the bullish case. The bearish case is basically if we can't hold around, I would say closer to 600. I think that's going to be a very big psychological level. You could see how many times we tested that before. If we pump and then we reject and we can't hold 600, if we fail at 600, we could be dipping back down to 586 or below. We basically need to lose the low of the day and lose 600, those two supports. Then I would not rule out the 580s, 586 or below. So, in my opinion, what is going to likely happen? Well, we have the bullish case, break 607, and we're going towards all-time highs to fill this imbalance. The bearish case is that there is a left shoulder, a head, and maybe a right shoulder, which could take us right back down, especially if 586 fails us. That's the bearish case. We also have a double confluence, which is that, once again, there's a rising wedge for the right shoulder. And even if we go higher, there's that risk of downside if we get some kind of rejection. That's like the more bearish case. Once again, we have that left shoulder, head, and then right shoulder taking us right back down. So that is like the more bearish case. What do I think is going to happen now? So I still think we go a little bit higher. I think that we're going to try to hold up. We keep on making higher lows, and higher lows. So I would not rule out 606.5 to 607. And then we'll see if we get some kind of rejection off this or not. 607 is a make or break level. If we break this, we're going for all-time highs. If not, we could reject. There is a risk of rejection, so I want to give you guys a warning about that as we have a head and shoulders setup. But don't just blindly short out of nowhere. Look for confirmation. You want to see us basically break this wedge. You need to wait for confirmation just to be safe. So let's wait and see. Sure, the market's uptrending, but don't forget there's still a lot of tension between the US and China, and we have to be very open-minded for anything in a crazy market like this. Now, the IWM is showing a lot more strength compared to SPY and the QQQ, but mind that there is still this gap at 238 that could get filled. If we're bullish, you want to see us hold 250. As long as 250 holds, we're looking for essentially 2.5 or above. If we're bearish, you want to see us lose 244. If that fails us, we could be dipping to fill this gap. I do think we go a little higher tomorrow for like 252 and we consolidate. Then we'll see if we turn back down to 244. On ES, we're making higher lows. Now, here's the thing about ES. Very similar setup. This is what's leading SPY to some extent. There's a left shoulder, head, and possibly a right shoulder forming. Now, if this is a trap, you want to see us hold above, I would say like the 6760 zone. If we could break and hold that, we could be going for all-time highs, but we need to basically hold 6760 for at least 4 hours. Today, as we touch 6750, we got a rejection. So the bearish case is going to be if 6670 fails us, we could be dumping right back down below 6600. I think that for now, we're looking a little bit more bullish, and we're going to be looking for a retest of 6750 tomorrow for an attempt to go higher. And I think we might be trying to retest this high here, but I'm not confident we just break past this and go to all-time highs. It's possible if we hold 6760, but if we reject, there's still that head and shoulders setup. So watch for a pump tomorrow morning, and we'll see if we get a rejection. Be very patient. We also look more bullish on NQ. As you guys know, we have an imbalance down here, higher lows, and higher lows, which could help us continue to push back up for 25,200 or above. But if we're bearish, we're looking for 24,633. So you want to be very careful. Anything is possible. There's a left shoulder, head, and then right shoulder. If we reject near 25,000 on NQ, basically between 25,000 and 25,100. If we reject, we're turning right back down. But if we hold above that, we could continue to push for 25,100. I think we push for 25,000, maybe go a little bit above that tomorrow. So look for some upside in the morning. And then we're going to see if we get a rejection on NQ or not. Now, Bitcoin is showing some weakness. We did talk about this. Remember how I mentioned this white line right here? We rejected. We came closer to it, and then we rejected again. So we're still showing some weakness. I think Bitcoin's going to bounce for 112,880. Then we're going to see if it kind of turns back down again like this. So be very careful with Bitcoin. Tesla's doing well. There's a bullish and a bearish case on Tesla. The bulls will argue that as we get close to earnings, we have an inverse head and shoulders right here, just like this. If Tesla could hold above 440, we're looking for 445 or above. But if we lose 426, we could be dipping back down to fill this gap. The risk of Tesla is this. Every time we've pumped, we got rejected, pump, rejection, pump, rejection, pump, rejection. And I think that Tesla's also following the overall market. It dumped with the market and started to bounce with SPY and the QQQ for the last couple of days. But don't forget there's a head and shoulders, and then there's two gaps below. In case we lose 426, there's a gap right here in 413, another gap down here around 395. So there's double gaps on Tesla. So we're a little bit more bullish right now. We're looking quite good. We could be looking for 440 to 445. And then we're going to see if we turn back down from that high to retest 426. But I do anticipate some upside into the low 440s for now before we see some kind of rejection possibly. So keep that in mind. Now, Nvidia's range bound. As we hit 184, we like to reject. As we hit 178, we like to bounce. We could be looking for an attempt for 184, and we'll see if we turn back down or not. But overall, we're still doing a decent job. On Apple, we're making higher lows right here. If we end up losing 245, we're looking for a dip back down. If we break 251, we're looking more bullish. I think we're going to test 251. And we're going to see if Apple could break that to go a little bit higher. If not, we could be rejecting. But overall, Apple does look a bit more bullish, favoring the low 250s, and we'll see if it rejects. For Netflix, we're basing at 1200. We're barely holding supports. We need to hold 1200 to bounce back up to 1212, and we'll see if we reject or not after that. But overall, although we're on a downtrend, there is strong support at 1200. We're going to see how it reacts. I think we trade sideways between 1212 and 1200 for now. We're kind of stuck for now, unless we lose support. MSTR is on a downtrend. We could bounce a little bit back up towards 306. Then we'll see if we start tipping back down to like 288. Celsius looks more bullish. Nice double bottom. As long as we don't lose 62, we're favoring 64 or above as our targets. On Supermicro, we have 54.41 as resistance and 53 as our support. We're going back and forth between supply and demand. So I think 55 could be tested. We'll see what happens after that. Palantir is making higher lows right here. So long as we don't end up losing 175, we could be looking for 182 as our resistance. Nice double bottom, and we could be looking for 182 very, very soon. Rivian has a nice inverse head and shoulders. If we end up losing 13.21, we're looking for a dip back down towards this gap fill. If we break 13.5, we're looking for 13.72 as our resistance. Might dip a bit before it tries to bounce for 13.5, and we'll see what happens after that. For SoFi, we have a nice double bottom here. If we lose 27.4, we're looking for a dump back down to 26.64. We also have resistance at 29, so as long as we hold this, we could be bouncing for 29. On AMD, AMD is basically forming a double bottom. It looks bullish. It's favoring a retest of 244 tomorrow. We'll see if that breaks. If we take out this high, we're looking for 250. This still looks more bullish as long as we don't end up rejecting here. I'm going to be favoring once again a test of that high. We need to lose 222 to be more bearish, but as of right now, there's no confirmation, and we're favoring the highs to be retested. ARM is looking more bullish to me because we're holding up very nicely. We're looking for an attempt for basically 176. PayPal's looking decent. It could be retesting essentially 67 before it tries to bounce. Coinbase is on a bit of a downtrend. It's kind of like forming a wedge. It might consolidate for like the lower 330s before it tries to bounce. Amazon, real quick, might be retesting 218 if we get some kind of bounce here. It's possible with the triple bottom. Meta is favoring 722 very soon for a temporary bounce. Google has a nice uptrend, but be careful in case this is forming like a rising wedge. It may continue to uptrend for basically 255, and we'll see if you reject or not, but there's still some upside potential. And Microsoft is consolidating between 516 and 510, might be dipping to 510 tomorrow before it tries to bounce. And then Oracle may also retest 300. It's also consolidating right here, not really doing much. The VIX is range bound until we see this thing break 22 to be bullish or lose like the 18.8 area to be bearish. We're just range bound until we see one of these directions break. The dollar is dipping, the 10 year is also down, and so is crude, so we're still kind of stuck. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. The market's on a bit of an uptrend, so do expect some upside as the most likely possibility for tomorrow morning. But be careful. We have a head and shoulders like pattern and a rising wedge. I'm not saying they will pan out. I'm saying that we have to watch for confirmation in case they do, because there is a risk of that potentially happening with the whole trade war situation still in full effect, even after what President Trump just said. With that being said, thank you for listening. For now, we're bullish, but we'll see if the market shifts directions or not. And I want to give you guys a very, very big warning in advance about this. Watch the market very carefully, and we're going to see if the head and shoulders pans out on SPY or not. All right. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your guys' days, and I'll be back tomorrow before market open for another update. Until then, take care and peace out.